Hello and welcome to my video on lens focal lengths. So in the last video we looked at what all the different numbers meant on a lens, but this one I just want to concentrate on the focal length. And this is the most important number on a lens, and it can vary from 8mm up to about 800mm. So it's all done in millimeters. If it has two numbers, it's a zoom lens. If it has one number, it's a fixed lens. Now all these different numbers can make a great big difference to what your photography will look like or what your final image will look like. And in this video I want to show you the difference between the different focal lengths. The basics of the number convention is the same whether you've got a full frame camera like a 6D or whether you've got a crop sensor camera like an 80D or an 800D, something like that. The basics are the same. There are differences and I will go through those at the end of the video, but this is more about the different types of lenses that you can get. Now let's start with the low numbers. Let's start with what is classed as the wide angle lenses. And this is generally a lens with a focal length or number below 35mm. So this one we've got on here is the 10 to 18, which is a fantastic lens by the way. It's a really good wide angle lens. And what we mean by wide angle is that you can basically get more in with this lens. So you're getting more of the vista, great for landscapes and things like that, great for big group shots of people. You're going to get everybody in and be able to see everybody. It's also really handy in situations like this. I'm inside a little engine shed here and we've got an oil engine. I thought it was a steam engine, it's not, it's an oil engine behind us. Now I'm obviously very close to the subject, but using the 80D and the 10 to 18mm, you can see how close I can get. So this shot is done at 10mm, and then if I zoom into 18mm, and there you go. You can see the difference straight away. You can see the difference between the 10 and the 18mm. It's great for, as I said, situations where you're nice and close in, where you want to get the really nice wide angle shots. A good tip when using a wide angle lens is getting in really close to your subject. You can create a very different perspective and really give your images a different look. Be a little bit careful when you are getting really close to your subject, because it's not unheard of for people to hit the front of their lens with their subject, because it does actually look much further away than it is. Now the next lens I'm going to talk about is the 1855, or what is called a standard lens. This is probably the first lens that you will come across because it's generally the one that's bought with the camera in the kit. Now they get a bit of a bad rep to say that they're quite basic and boring lenses and that kind of thing, but actually they're very, very versatile. You can do lots of different types of photography, whether you want to experiment with a bit of landscape work, a bit of portrait work and this kind of thing. So to give you an example of the focal length, let's fire this up and let's see. So that's 18 and that's 55mm. So you can see straight away that there's a big difference in the focal length range and can give you some really nice different effects. Now these are great multi-purpose lenses, and when I say multi-purpose I mean that you can do lots of different types of photography. They're also really nice because the perspective that you see is very similar to the human eye. So the images you get back are quite similar to what your eye sees or how you remember imagery. So it's a great place to start out before you start getting really creative. Now one thing I wanted to talk about with this lens is the relationship between you and the distance to your subject can really vary what the image looks like. So say for instance, I'm going to put the camera at 55mm. I'm going to do a shot quite close to this subject. Then I'm going to stay at 55mm. I'm going to take a couple of steps back and do the same shot. Now not only can you see the size of the subject change, but look at its relationship to the background. And this is something I'm going to come on to in a little bit later on in the video. So now we're on to the telephoto lenses, and telephoto lenses are generally lenses with a focal length of above 55mm, and the idea of these lenses is to bring your subject nearer. So if you're shooting subjects like wildlife or sports, action, this kind of thing, where you either can't get too close to the action, or if you do, you may distract your subject, these are the lenses to use. So to give you an idea what this looks like, let's say this is the 55 to 250, which once again is a fantastic lens. If I use this lens at 55mm, and then I zoom in now to 250. There you go, and I'll come back to about 100mm. And there you go, you can see the difference in the focal length. So once again, a nice versatile lens in its focal lengths, but you can see how close you can get to your subject. So you know what I was saying just now about isolating your subject from the background. So the longer focal length lenses are fantastic for doing that. So if I take a shot of this engine here at 55mm, So there's a couple of shots there at 55mm. I'm going to do 100 metre, I'm going to do a dash away from it, and then I'm going to zoom in, and you can see how I can isolate this from the background. So if I take a couple of shots now quickly, oh, I can't get it all in, I need to go further away. But look at the relationship between the engine and the background. You can really see how the perspective changes. Now if I come over this way a bit more, you should be able to see it a bit better. So that was a bit of a rush because obviously the train was moving, but I want to give you another example of how the focal length can affect the relationship your subject has with its background. So we've got this points lever here, and I like the end of it. I think it looks quite cool. So I've still got the 55 to 250 on here. So I'm going to take a shot at 55 millimeter. I'm going to get in nice and close and get it nice and sharp. There you go, nice and sharp. And if you look at the background on this shot, you can see the railings in the background there. Now if I step away and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to try and get the top of the points the similar sort of size. Now if you look at it, you can see that the railings are a lot less predominant, or they're much harder to see and not quite so distracting. So that's the three main types of lenses covered off. So we've got wide angle, we've got standard, and we've got telephoto. Now the next one I'm going to talk to you about is fast lenses. So also referred as like fast glass and this kind of thing. So basically what this means, this is a lens with a low f number, a low aperture number, like f1.8, f2, f2.8 sometimes. Now we'll go into what that's all about in another video, but what I want to talk about here is the 50mm 1.8. So if you own an SLR, you really should have a wide angle, you should have a standard lens, you should have a zoom lens of some description, and then the next one you need to look at is the fast glass. So this is a 50mm 1.8. The beauty of having this fast piece of glass, so this low f number, is its ability to shoot in low light. So in very poor lighting conditions, you can still get amazing imagery. It's great for street photography at night and this kind of thing. So it's very dark in here, so this is a great place to try this lens out. I'll take a few shots around here and show you what I mean. These lenses are not only great in low light, but they're really good for being creative. You can get some lovely effects. Now there's one specialist type of lens I want to talk to you about, and those are macro lenses. So this is a 35mm macro lens. They come in varying focal lengths, 100mm, 60mm and this kind of thing. Now the idea of macro lenses is to get in really super close to your subject. On the side of the lens it will actually tell you how close you can get, and you'd be amazed at the kind of detail you can get with these. So let's do a little shot here and just experiment. So this bike here, I'm going to go in on the name of it here, and I've gone really close. And still, if I go in super close, it's pretty, oh, I've actually touched the subject here, but I can actually still get a nice sharp image. Now with this lens, it's actually quite dark in here, so I'm going to do something a bit different, which I'm going to do this. And I'm actually going to light the subject using the light on the end of the lens, and I can get in really, once again, super close. And you can see the difference in the image quality there. So these lenses are not just for macro photography, they can also be used for portrait shooting, which makes them quite a versatile lens. Now I've just spoken about macro lenses, but a lot of lenses can be used to get really close into your subject. Okay, maybe not as close as dedicated macro lenses, but can still get in and pick off some really good detail. One of my favourites, and not one that you'd think about, is the 100 to 400mm. Now this is obviously a lens designed to bring your subject nice and close for doing sports, wildlife, action photography and that kind of thing, but what you'd be amazed with, so we've got this hook and a bit of chain here which I can pretty much touch with my hand, but if I line it up, got the lens at 400mm, I pointed at this hook, I can actually get some beautiful shots with it. So you can see sometimes thinking outside the box on lenses that you have can give you some amazing effects. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the type of camera that you're using can affect the way that the focal length will make your image look. Now, I've got two cameras here. I've got the 80D and I've got the 6D Mark II. Now, the big difference between these two is the sensor size. So this has the APS-C size sensor and this has a full frame sensor. So anything from 4000D up to 7D Mark II has the crop sensor, the APS-C size sensor. Then anything above 6D Mark II, 5D and 1 series all have the full frame sensor. So using the same lens at the same focal length will make your image look different. So as an example, I have the 28mm lens here. Now if I use these on both these cameras, you will see a difference in the focal length. So first of all, let's have a look at the 28mm on an 80D. Now let's have a look at the 28mm on the 6D Mark II. Now you'll see on the 6D Mark II you're getting more in, it's giving you a wider perspective. Now let's try this with another lens. So we've got the 100 to 400mm here. Let's try the same test again with the 100 to 400. So on the 80D at 100mm and on the 6D Mark II at 100mm. So while we're here, we might as well do the same test again. Let's turn the lens to 400mm, and first of all, let's do it on the 6D Mark II. And now let's do it on the 80D. And you can see the difference, you can see the benefits of both. So with the crop sensor or the APS-C size sensor, you get a lot more reach on your lenses, which means you can bring your subject a lot nearer, so great for sports and action and this kind of thing. You don't need to buy such a long lens, you can bring your subject nearer. Whereas the full frame, generally wider, you can get more in. There's also more detail with the full frame sensor, but I think that's another video. But anyway, that's a very quick example of the differences or using the different size sensors and using different lenses. So as you've just seen, it looks very different depending on whether you're using a full frame camera or whether you use an APS-C size sensor. Now there is a calculation you can do to work out the difference, and it's a 1.6 times difference. So if you're using a lens on a crop sensor and you want to use, or you want to get the same focal length on a full frame camera like the 6D or something, you need a lens that's 1.6 times longer to get the same field of view or the same sort of look to your image. So just bear that in mind. If you're moving from like a 77D up to something like a 6D, to get the same kind of reach, you need to increase your lenses by 1.6 times to get the same look and feel. Now this is an 800mm lens, which is the longest one that we do, and I'm using it on an 80D. So what focal length lens would I need to get the same kind of magnification or the same look and feel on a full frame camera? If you know, put it in the comment sections below. So thank you for watching this video. If you've got any comments, also leave them below. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up.